Welcome back to Performance Impact Week, day 2. I'm so glad to see so many of you back here today as well. And honestly, yesterday, it was something else. I love the energy that you all came in with and the flow in the chat, all the engagement, all the questions that we got to our experts. Thank you. Thank you for really creating a badass start to our event and our week. Keep up that good work today, and I know that we'll have an awesome day together. I saw many of you posting on social media after the event. That made me super happy to see. Please keep on doing that. If you are sharing things from the event, please use our hashtag PIV2026. It makes it possible for us and everyone else to continue having this dialogue and this discussion when we go outside of the event as well. So please do share things from the event and please use the hashtag PIV2026. For you that are tuning in for the first time, my name is Michelle Wester. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Noli, and I have the honor of moderating this Performance Impact Week and running it together with some other people. Today, the theme is partnering with the business for impact. If we yesterday talked about how we position ourselves on being heard from the business, today we'll talk about how we're actually working and partnering together with the business. And we don't want to do this in a slogan way. We want to do it in the real day-to-day, the messy way where we understand what we actually do when we're partnering and collaborating with the business. The session will look kind of the same like it did yesterday. It will be divided into 3 blocks. The first block is for our expert of the day. That's Lavinia, who I will be introducing shortly. After that, we have our practitioners, which are Frida and Martina from Scandic Hotels. And then the last 30 minutes, that's for our Q&A, where I'll make sure to pick up all your questions and your reflections that you put into the chat. Just like yesterday, you will find the chat in the bottom right corner of your screen. My colleagues are right now in there moderating it. Make sure to say hi to them. Make sure to give them some love. And as soon as you have any questions or reflections comes up to you, make sure to share it in the chat. That's really how we create that engagement throughout this session. So please share all that, and I'll make sure to highlight your questions and reflections at the end in our Q&A. With that said, I think it's time for us to introduce the first speaker of the day. And I'm quite sure many of you know who Lavinia is. She's the co-founder and learning architect at Offbeat, a community for learning professionals that kind of become a second home to a lot of us. She introduces herself, and I'm quoting here, as a learning nerd, as a dreamer, as a former workaholic, and as a passionate learning nerd. I think that's the best bio that I've ever heard, and I just love it. Her session today is about how L&D successfully can support strategy execution. And she's asking a set of questions that I think a lot of us has asked ourselves quite a few times. What is our strategy? How do we actually, in the best way from a learning perspective, support it? And how can I do to contribute? I'm really excited to get to listen into this. Melanie, I will open up my popcorns and I will welcome Lavinia to the stage. Welcome.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. Are you good today?
Yes, I am. A bit nervous, like before any presentation, but otherwise all good and excited to dive into it.
Nice. I'll let you dive into it and I'll lean back and I'll see you in just a few minutes. Good luck.
Bye. Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. So we have a full week talking about performance, and when Ryan, now a long-time connection of mine, invited me to speak, I kept on thinking, what is performance and how do I define performance? even leaving L&D out of it completely for a second and just thinking about organizational performance. And I kept on looking for all sorts of definitions. And I found one that sounded very, very interesting. And I'm paraphrasing here and just simplifying it as performance is the gap between what the business needs and what people do on a Monday. So what the business needs is usually translated into a company strategy that gets reviewed every year or every couple of years. And then what people do on a Monday is what people do on their day-to-day work, obviously. And then the gap between those two can be bigger. So people might do things that might be a bit different than what we need to do in the company, or it can be smaller, so people are aligned to the company strategy and delivering upon it day after day. But for that gap to be small, one of the most basic things we need to ask is, what is our company strategy? And then I know it sounds, again, very, very basic, but I decided to put this question on the slide because in a study published in HBR, it was found that fewer than 5% of employees have a basic understanding of their company's strategy. So if this is the most basic thing we need to do in order to deliver upon that strategy, then we're a bit in trouble, because it seems like what's actually happening is that exec teams spend days, weeks, months into crafting a strategy, but then something gets lost on the way to middle managers and to individual contributors. And this problem has also been defined in another study, because they found that 67% of strategies developed by leadership teams fail. What usually happens is that after the leadership team has spent a lot of time thinking about the strategy, they might send like bullet points, maybe not the entire strategy, in an email to employees, or maybe there might be some sort of all hands session live online where they try to walk through what's going to happen with the company in the next few years. The question is that enough? Because it seems like it might not be enough. And now there are so many reasons why strategy execution fails. And two that came to mind for me was maybe that the strategy wasn't good enough. And the second one, which was found also in a PMI research very recently in 2025, is that the strategy execution gap is the biggest barrier to organizational transformation. So again, something gets lost on the way to execution. And this is a well-known problem. Now, the question is, can L&D do something about it? I decided to bring this slightly different angle to the conversation. And again, I'll be really curious to know what you think of it in the Q&A and in the chat. I'm Lavinia, just like Michelle said, I'm the co-founder and learning architect at Offbeat, a learning community dedicated to learning and development professionals. We gather to talk about our current projects, experiments, challenges, and to think about how we can improve the work that we do to honestly survive in this field, but also to have more impact in the future. And what I do in my day-to-day work all day, every day, is to talk to L&Ds. And I had a pleasure in October of 2025 to be invited to facilitate strategy creation workshop for an L&D team. Basically, they were wondering what are going to be their priorities for 2026. And they invited me so we can just chat about it in a more structured way. Two of the things that came up for them, the first one will be maybe very, very familiar for everyone, which is AI adoption. That came first in their priorities. But the second one is what actually called my attention. One of them came up to say that their company had recently developed a new company strategy. And it was a very complex strategy for a couple of years in front of them. It had like 12 points. And what she was worried about was that employees, again, middle managers, individual contributors, won't actually fully understand what that strategy meant unless they would create space for conversation around it. So she identified very quickly that just one deck, one session wasn't enough. So they were wondering, is there something we can do about it so that our colleagues can be aware of the strategy, can understand it, and they can actually align their day-to-day work to it? So that stuck with me. I found like a really interesting way L&D can contribute. So I decided to look a bit into it and just ask, are there any theories, frameworks, ideas out there that are already discussed? Are there companies that are already doing this? And of course, like many other things in this world nowadays, is that the answer was yes, of course, somebody is discussing about this. And I stumbled upon this book, Bridging Organization Design and Performance, and they talk about three things when it comes to closing the gap between what they call a paper strategy and what people do in their day-to-day job. And you'll see that none of it has to do with decks and one-time sessions in any way, shape, or form. The first idea is something that we're quite familiar with, this idea of people having the right know-how, right? We have a new strategy. There might be new skills and capabilities that people need. So what we do in our work as L&Ds is that we go in, do our maybe annual needs assessment. It's even more frequent nowadays, to understand the goals of a department or of the company entirely, the capabilities that department needs, where we are, and we try to close that gap with all sorts of learning methods, from workshops, trainings, mentorship programs, e-learning sessions, and so on and so forth. So this is something we're familiar with, and most companies are doing it in a way or another. Now, what was interesting for me was the other two elements. First one is having the right conversations. So after you have that deck with what the strategy is going to be, after you have one session with the exec team explaining it out loud, usually the work stops there. So people are left either wondering like, okay, what does this mean for me? And most likely just going back very quickly to their day-to-day work, because those are like the pressing issues that need to be solved. And nobody actually spends time thinking about the new strategy and talking out loud about the new strategy. And there are all sorts of conversations that we can facilitate here. One of them is translation conversations. So just spending time with groups of people, either leaders or teams, just discussing what does this strategy mean for us, for our projects, for our roles, and is there anything that we need to give up in what we do now? Maybe it's a project that we need to give up or deprioritize, or maybe it's a way of working that needs to change in order to accommodate ways of working for the new strategy. And then there are conversations that can be facilitated ongoing as the strategy is executed, like sense-making conversations where we just ask, okay, where are we? What experiments have we done so far? What challenges have we encountered? Are we overcoming those or not? What's blocking us? What else do we need to do? And of course, progress conversations that can be had together with sense-making conversations, just to see where you are regarding different metrics and goals. And then, as almost as a byproduct of these conversations, something else that is needed is the right connections within the company. And I was just reading another article in HBR that said how many challenges we have when it comes to cross-team collaboration, cross-departmental collaboration. We are used to working a lot in silos and not seeing the big picture and not collaborating well with each other, maybe outside our teams, right? But in order to execute on a strategy, we do need to align across departments, across teams, and so on. And I think going back to the AI conversation, I think that's a very good example to give, because when it comes to AI enablement, it isn't just one team that's going to do that. It will probably be a combination of IT and tech, legal, cybersecurity, L&D, of course, middle managers, and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that these teams come together and align on a way of doing things. And again, AI is just one example. It's probably the same case for any other goals that a company has. They're rarely achieved in isolation, right? So through creating these spaces for conversations, the right connections can be built as well. One of the things we do at Offbeat is this newsletter where I basically just write all the thoughts that come to me, just to sense check them with the L&D community. And I wrote about this reflection that I had and these findings. And an L&D wrote back to me saying she resonates a lot with what I was saying, but her team decided to take the strategy discussion a step back when the strategy was actually created. So what they did, they found themselves last year in a place, again, very similar for many companies. They realized that their colleagues didn't know what the company strategy was, or that there even was such a thing as a global company strategy. And they wanted to avoid that for the next 5 years, which was the timeline they were designing their new strategy for. And they thought, what if we would invite people to engage with the strategy creation process? So they invited different types of groups: middle managers, senior leaders, and even young professionals. And I'll talk about how they did it in a second. But what she told me was that she saw different benefits. The first one was that the execs themselves were saying that they felt the strategy was even more grounded in reality, because they were getting input from those people that were closest to their customers, to how operations work in their companies, and so on. So that was the first benefit. The second benefit, I think, applies to any project where you co-create things with another audience, and it's called the IKEA effect. So it might be called quite telling what this is about, because what it says is that when people get involved in shaping something, they are more likely that first they will engage with actually deploying it later on. In this case, it would be the deployment of the strategy, but they will also become more engaged in promoting whatever they were creating. So that was the second benefit. And the last benefit, it's quite useful, especially for the time we found ourselves in, because there's such a big narrative around the fact that AI will take some of the recurrent tasks that people are doing. So we as humans are left with what I like to call power skills, things like critical thinking, creative thinking, or strategic thinking. But the question is, how are we making sure that we're supporting the development of these skills within our company? And actively involving people in creating a strategy turns out that might lead to better strategic thinking, because you expose everyone to how executive teams work, and they are considered to be the most strategic within a company. And you engage everyone in asking better questions and just giving input into the process of creating a strategy. So you get a better strategy, you get this IKEA effect, and you get to grow this strategic thinking inside your organization. So just to summarize up until now, performance could mean people doing daily what the company said it needs in its strategy, and closing this strategy to execution gap requires, first of all, actively involving people in creating the strategy, and secondly, creating space for people to make sense of what that strategy means for their day-to-day roles, workflows, projects, and so on and so forth. But we're already doing so much. There are so many things that we're worried about, so many things that we have on our plates, all sorts of project stakeholders coming to us daily with requests that are very, very diverse. So how can we add this angle to our work on top of everything else that we're doing? What was interesting for me to discover talking to other L&Ds was that you don't need to add anything on top, because what you can actually do is to use spaces you already have available to create conversations about your company strategy. And the L&D who wrote to me saying she involved people in creating the strategy mentioned that she did so in their leadership development program. So basically, instead of having all sorts of sessions about, the usual feedback, performance management, and so on, whatever else you add to a leadership development program, they decided for a year to do a trade-off, or for a couple of months to do a trade-off, and instead spend those leadership development sessions to bring in exec leaders to present how they were shaping the strategy, and give all leaders the space to ask questions and give their input about how the strategy was created. So this program already existed. They just pivoted for a while because that's what the company had as like the most pressing project. Another thing they did was to look at their employee life cycle and wonder in what moments throughout this life cycle can we bring in the conversation about our strategy, to make sure that, if not, people are at least aware of the existence of a strategy, they have some space to ask questions and understand it. You can do so until with the start, you recruit someone, you can already start that conversation. They decided to do so in the onboarding phase. So through all sorts of sessions and e-learnings, they made sure that they present the strategy, and they also offer people the space to ask questions. And of course, another place could be performance conversations, where goals are set, reviewed, to make sure that those goals are aligned with the broader strategy. And the final thing they did was that they partnered with their internal communications team to make sure that that conversation was ongoing. So they used existing spaces and existing channels like newsletters, all hands sessions, or fireside chats to bring in execs or teams who were progressing with their goals, to keep that conversation ongoing while it was developing and being deployed later on. So you don't need to create new spaces. I already know we have a big problem with engaging people in new sessions. If it's not AI, people usually disappear. So you don't need to do that. You can think of these sessions and these spaces that are already there and just start to close that gap between strategy on paper and execution. Then another big problem that we have in L&D is how do we measure things? Because this is an effort that is quite hidden, I would say. How do we measure whether people know the strategy better, understand it better, and so on and so forth? And I remembered that in my previous company, we tried to squeeze data from our engagement survey as much as we could. We had this large engagement survey. It was developed in-house, so we could tweak questions, we could add or subtract questions as we desired, which was an amazing thing. But I know that the tools that are available right now, where you get like your engagement survey or already made by them, they're also quite easy to tweak. So I thought, okay, did we have any questions that could measure awareness and also alignment with strategy goals? And I realized that for sure we had. The first one was, I understand our company strategy. And there was supposed to be an image here. So if you see an error, no worries, it happens. So, but the most important part is the text. So we had this statement, I understand our company's strategy. The statement could be scored from 0 to 10 because our scores were NPS scores. So we would get a score that would tell us whether people understood or not the company strategy. And then the other one was, I see how my work contributes to our company's strategy. And if the score is low here, it means that those conversations, those translation conversations might not have happened. So people find it hard to link what they do in their day-to-day work to the broader overview of the company. So these are just, again, two things that I could think of top of mind to measure where you are right now as a benchmark. But then if you do any efforts in this direction to see if anything changes or not. So I would say that L&D needs a bit of rewiring. But what is the good news, in my opinion, is that we already have skills and connections that we can use to close gaps that are actually very, very pressing in our companies. One of the skills that I mentioned in a hidden way, maybe, was facilitation. We use facilitation for skill development workshops, but in reality, facilitation is a technique and a discipline that can be used in so many other ways, and creating space for conversation is definitely one of them. And then, as L&Ds, we're quite well positioned. We talk to leaders most of our day, and we're also connected to other people teams, to our HR business partners, to our internal comms teams, and so on. So we can use those connections as well to close different pressing gaps. The one we explore today is the strategy execution gap. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was amazing. I have so many questions. I want to double click on one thing. Can we do that? Because you mentioned that we need to rewire L&D, and I agree with you. Could we just double click on that? What do you mean? What does rewiring mean here? Just some example.
Yes, of course. This facilitation example is one of them. Basically, we already have this skill, but we're using it in such a narrow way. Why not try to use it to solve other challenges that the company has? Strategy execution is one example. Team development is another one. So a question is, what is it that we already have that we need in the future? And what is it that we need to let go of? And that's a harder one, if you ask me, because traditionally we've been asked to do certain things that might not benefit us in the future. And yeah, I can go on and on about this.
I think this is perfect. I think this is something we should be double clicking on together even more in the future, because we talk a lot about this, that there's some small shifts, some rewiring needs to be done, and I think a lot of people out in the community is feeling this. A lot of people are talking about, I'm doing kind of different things that I was 3 years ago, but I think we need to really be specific in what is it that we need to do differently? Why do we need to do this? And what are the people that are succeeding right now doing differently? I mean, this was amazing. I loved the fact that you mentioned like using the spaces that you already have. I think that is such a golden nugget. That is underlined and circled and everything on my paper right now. Thank you for bringing that up. We will now move over to our two practitioners of the day. So from Lavinia's exceptional presentation, we'll deep dive into a practitioner's case. How does this actually look when an organization is partnering with the business? And the guests that we have with us today to do this are none other than the Scandic Hotels. They're the largest hotel chain in the Nordics. And with us, we have Martina Ekbom, from Head of Learning at Scandic Hotels. She has a background in behavioral science, and she spent over 15 years in working in large-scale transformations. Together with her is Frida Klingström. She's the learning lead at Scandic, and she has a background in marketing, and she's right now really passionate when it comes to leveraging AI and seeing how we can use that in the best way possible to enable better learning. The title of their session today, I think, is just perfect. Partnering with the business for impact. Is there any other way to do it? I'm really curious to hear what both of you have to say, and I want to welcome both Martina and Frida to the stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you for that presentation. So I'm Martina, and with you, as you said, I have my fantastic colleague Frida. And just thank you to Lavinia as well. Really interesting to listen into that. Noted so many things. And in this sessions, we will, as you said, try to be a bit concrete and show you what we have actually done in this area. And to be honest, as you mentioned, when we got the question back in January to speak at this week on the topic, partnering with the business for real impact, Frida and I kind of looked at each other and said, is there any other way? Hence the title. Because we so genuinely believe that this is the only way to create real business impact. And today we're excited to share some examples that we have that kind of prove this hypothesis. So, with that said, we're going to guide you through this coming 30 minutes, a brief introduction to Scandic Hotels, since some of you might not have heard about it before, but then we'll focus on two different cases showing how we have moved from more traditional collaboration to partnership that really drives business impact. And then we'll round up with a few key takeaways. And to understand where we come from and what kind of challenges we have within our business, we thought we would just give you a brief introduction to our business. And Scandic Hotels first opened their doors in Sweden back in 1963. And today we're present in over 130 destinations across the Nordics, but also in Germany and Poland, and we're also expanding in UK and Ireland this year. So we're very much a business in growth, you can say. But our core thing, that is hotel operations, food and beverage, staying over, great service. And we are driven by 19,000 team members from over different, I think it's 130 different nationalities, only in Sweden, actually. So we are a highly diverse and people-driven organization. And at Scandic, we have 7 L&D professionals working cross markets with one purpose: to help Scandic move into the future. And the big question is then, of course, how do we do this? And I will show you something that is not new to you. I think most of you have seen this model before, the 70-20-10 model. And at Scandic, we have worked with this mindset for many years, because obviously we know that most learning happens when doing and sharing with each other. However, the challenge is, as I guess most of you experience as well, that it's very easy to get stuck in the first 10% in formal courses and training requests. But I mean, this is not where real business happen or business impact. And this brings us to our cases that we will show you today. So, as I said, and I mean, we often ask to deliver learning, but learning is rarely the problem. The real need and problem usually sits somewhere else. So the question becomes, how do we move from requests to real capability shifts, and from order taking to business impact? And to explore this, Frida and I will share 2 cases, as I said, showing a slightly different approach of how we have been partnering with the business. And if we start with case number 1, we call it the post-pandemic case, when learning became business crucial or business critical. Because to paint you the picture, back when the pandemic, and now I'm talking about COVID, hit us, this was a major turning point and a major crisis for Scandic. We had to close most of our hotels, and we lost up to 50% of our workforce. And then when recovery began, the challenge was so immediate. We had to recruit, onboard, and enable nearly 10,000 employees. And many of these were completely new to our business. And this had to be done really quickly because our guests were starting to come back. So basically, this was not an L&D challenge. It was a business survival challenge. And that made us forced to rethink the L&D purpose, going from a support function to a true business partner. And instead of asking what training should we roll out, we had to ask instead, what does the business need to succeed right now? And I'll show you how we did this. And I mean, this is not rocket science. I'll tell you that beforehand, but it's highly impactful. So if we look at what we did, to make it a bit more concrete, well, obviously, as we need to start it somewhere, we partnered tightly with the business. It was frontline teams, it was leaders, it was reference groups, it was focus groups. We were out there because this was their problem, their solutions, and we needed to help scale that. So together, we defined what core skills mattered the most, and this is where the basic stuff comes in. It was service, it was practical skills, it was cleaning methods, and also hotel economy, and also together with what good looked like on this job. And also to make sure that our new employees had what they needed when they started from day one, we built and scaled super simple solutions that were easy accessible, difficult word, and also fully integrated into daily work and very practical. Again, it was about how do you carry plates? How do you do that in a simple way? However, scaling service and service skills for 10,000 new hours, that was a challenge because that requires practice and reflection, and you need to team up with your bigger team to know how to do this. And our leaders didn't have time, so we needed something new and slightly innovated. And this is when SID was born, our digital workshop assistant. And the perfect thing, or perfect, but the beauty with SID is that she helps train the team together. They train their service skills together in real work. For example, they could use the morning meetings, having a short workshop before they went out on the floor. And also to mention that this was a good thing for the leaders because, as we said, they didn't have time, but they could do these workshops and facilitate them without practically no preparation at all. And I would like to show you one of the promotional videos we did on SID, just to so that you understand the concept. And this is how we sold it to our leaders. So let's have a look.
Introducing our new service training. Get ready to experience a new, innovative approach to training, the Digital Service Workshops. Say hello to Zid, our digital workshop facilitator. Zid will take us through different topics, insights, and exercises as we dive deep into the art of how to deliver extraordinary service. Let's spark ideas, share insights, and learn from each other's experiences. Get ready to level up with on-demand flexible workshops that fit seamlessly into our day. Choose a workshop, jump in, and elevate our service game. Ready to boost our service in a fun and easy way? Hope to see you soon.
So that was SID. Might be a bit cheesy, but we tried to make it in a fun and innovative way, and it actually worked. So with that said, why did this work? And something, it's more about how we did it than what we did and how we worked together with the business. And I said, to start with, we had a real business emergency, getting 10,000 new employees back to operations and doing that really fast. And second, it was the clear ownership from top management. They set the expectation. They were really clear about this is not optional. Everybody needs to go through it this way. And thirdly, connecting back to the leadership importance, they drove this into their daily work, into operation. And also, I think a really crucial factor here was actually that they were followed up weekly by top management. It might sound a bit boring with the follow-up, but in this case, it actually was very important. And fourth, co-created with our employees. It was built for them in their situation, enabling fast adoption, which was really critical here. And the result, well, I can tell you that we have never before seen such commitment from the leaders and such a sense of urgency. And just an example, many hotels reach 98% completion rate of the onboarding learning journeys compared to our typical 30% or below. And that was just completion rate, but the actual outcome then, well, I would say that it worked because in 2024, Scandic was back to full speed. We have hired over 10,000 employees and our guest experience score had recovered to the levels that they were before the pandemic. So this was our first case driven by survival and recovery. So let's move into the next one. And what do we have there? It's a slightly different both approach and case. And this one is about growth and change, actually. And to set the scene for this one, around 60% of Scandic's revenue comes from B2B customers, business to business. And this makes sales a critical growth driver. And at the same time, the sales organization handling this, they were undergoing major changes. So when we got the question to help them and build a sales academy, the expectations was very high and the questions were quite many. But Frida, please tell us more about this case.
We did this because sales is a key strategic focus for Scandic, and the academy was launched to support the business and make sure that we excel in this field. But we took on this assignment on one condition. We needed a dedicated counterpart on the business side. someone working with us, not just towards us. We didn't want to build this for the business. We wanted to build this with the business. So we asked for someone who could dedicate 100% of their time from the business side, because this was such a large project, and we got that. And for us, having this support from the business side completely changed how we worked. So now, instead of L&D working on the outside and the business doing their thing, working on their own, we met in the middle. So the business, of course, they own the business context and the relationships and the credibility. And L&D, or in this case, me, I bring structure, learning design, behavior change expertise, and much more, of course. And together, we design, and we test, and we adjust. And we started with our first project, which is building an upskilling learning journey for part of the sales organization. So we didn't divide the work, we just combined our strength. And in this close relationship, we realized something really important. And that is that training alone still wasn't the answer. So we asked ourselves a very important question. What do we want people to do differently? We stopped focusing on what people should know and started focusing on what people actually should do. Because as you know, if behavior doesn't change, nothing really changes. So as I said, Scandic Sales Academy's first project was designing an upskilling learning journey that will be going on for over a year. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. We designed 8 focus areas. Each focus area focuses on a different behavior. And the order here is very intentional. We introduce each focus area at the point in the year when it's most relevant for the participant. So we didn't decide the training based on a training plan. We are aligning learning with the yearly business cycle, which is their reality. So for example, as you can see here, we do contracting when they move into contracting season after summer. So this is really learning in the flow of work when it can immediately be applied and make a difference. So once we knew which behaviors we wanted to drive, the next question was, so how do we design for this type of learning then? We can zoom in on one focus area here. This is what one focus area looks like. We use Noli as a system to help us keep track on everything we do and all the participants on this journey. Wouldn't be possible without them. We start with individual preparations. It's pre-work that takes 1 to 2 weeks. Here they work with their own customers. There are no fictional cases. This is really contextual learning, and learning starts here before the session. Then we move on to have live digital sessions, and these are facilitated by the business themselves. And these are more like workshops, I would say, because 80 to 90% here is actual discussion and individual work. We use the think, pair, share method. So instead of us telling them what to do, we create space for them to think, test ideas, and learn from each other. And everything they do is based on real challenges. So it's not really training sessions, it's more working sessions, I would say. And after the session, the learning doesn't stop. It continues in their daily work. They build on what they have started and apply it directly to their own customers. And they keep repeating and refining it over and over again. So this is how we remove the gap between learning and doing. Then we added something called peer learning groups. And this is small self-facilitated groups. We have 3 to 5 participants in each group. At the moment, we have 26 groups running in parallel. And this is only possible now that we work with Noli, because their system helps their participants organize this themselves. And in these groups, they reflect, they share what they've learned, and they learn from each other. And this way, learning becomes really social and continuous. But even with this strong setup, learning still doesn't happen of its own. We knew from the beginning that we can't drive a behavior change from the outside. It has to happen within the business together with the business. And here managers play a key role in making it real. So we made sure that they are always a part of the journey. Managers receive the same triggers as the participants. So they always know where their team is and what is happening. With every email that we send to participants with instructions or assignments, an email is also sent to managers to let them know what the participant is expected to do. And this makes it easy for the managers to do something very simple, yet so very powerful. And that is to ask, follow up, and show interest. I mean, one little question about how is it going, or I saw that you're working on, makes such a huge difference in showing that you as a manager care. And that shows the participant that this is important, and I probably need to prioritize this. Then we added in something that we call open door sessions. And this is a 45-minute Teams call with no agenda. It's a space for managers to meet and reflect and share and learn from each other. And I sit in on all these sessions because they are an important link between L&D and the business, because it helps me understand what is going on, because I can hear what happens out in their reality. I know what is working, I know what is not working, and I can adjust and improve as we move along. I made a video, and I'm going to show you that now. This is a video that we played for the participants when we introduced their learning journey at a kickoff earlier this year.
Welcome to Scandic Sales Academy. Your sales learning journey starts here. We are with you every step of the way. You will learn where the work happens, practicing real situations, tools, and tasks. Less theory, more doing. Your journey is divided into 8 different focus areas. Proactive customer analysis, relationship building, uncover and develop need, value presentation and proposal development, contracting, new customer prospecting and RFP management, room night adoption, and M&E business development with existing customers. It all starts with an email. This is where your individual preparation begins. You have 2 weeks to complete your pre-work. Next, you join a live digital session where you actively work, not just listen. In the sessions, we use the think, pair, share approach. You reflect on your own, you discuss with a peer, and share with the group. This turns thinking into action and conversation into real learning, because learning is stronger when you build it together. You will always leave the sessions with a clear next step and a plan to act on right away. The session ends, but the learning doesn't. Your post-work helps you practice and apply, making learning part of your everyday work. Then you move into smaller learning groups. Together, you reflect, share experiences, and learn from each other. When one focus area is complete, you move on to the next. Throughout the whole journey, your manager is there to support you. This is your journey, your learning and your growth. Be the reason great happens.
So what have we learned? 1, true partnership with the business isn't optional, it's essential. If we want learning to create real value, we have to work with the business. 2, we design for behavior change, not what people should know, but what people should do differently. And finally, we make it happen over time, because learning doesn't create impact of its own. It only happens when we support it in the flow of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida. And to summarize, Frida and I just put our heads together, like what are the red threads between these two different cases? And with that, we will send you with some takeaways along the way, use them or not. But for us, we see that this really works. And as we have said several times now, what really made the difference is that we started, both of these problems are real business problems, not learning needs. And impact happens when learning is anchored in urgent, real business challenges, as survival, as growth, revenue, not in requests for training. And the second one, to be bold and demand true partnership. And as Frida said, we took on case number 2 on one condition: to have a dedicated business counterpart working with us. Because the business knows the behavior needed, and we know how to build and scale it.
We need to secure ownership from leaders and managers early. Learning creates impact only when leaders are clear senders, set expectations, and managers actively role model and embedded learning into daily operations. And then, again, for the last time today, design for behavioral change and embed learning in daily work. Impact is created when learning focuses on what people must do differently and is integrated into daily work.
And I think it's so obvious for both of these cases. So in our experience, this actually works. We have seen it. And to finalize, we need to say that this wasn't a learning success. It was a partnership success, or even more, a company success. Because without real partnership with a business, L&D cannot create real impact. It is as simple as that. So I would like us all to stop asking for a seat at the table, solve the real business problems, and then the table will take care of itself. So let's go back to the opening question. Is partnering with the business the way to create impact? And our honest answer is yes, it's the only way. And thank you for that.
And Frida, if you have seen me and Lavinia throughout this call, but we've both been like two nodding dolls on a dashboard the entire time. So yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing practically what you've done here, because I think we talk about this a lot, the importance of partnering and working closely together with the business, being a part of. I mean, we also are the business. So how do we actually work with it since we are a part of it? But I think we need to be really specific on what we're doing. And I love just that detail that you mentioned in the beginning, Frida, where you said we demanded that we were having dedicated resources. We could not do this without us having that kind of resources. And actually, sometimes we need to say no. Takesha talked about this yesterday as well. Like, we need to say no to things to be able to do great things. And I think that's what you did there. Like, if we don't have this, we won't be able to deliver. So we need this, and then you got it, and then you were able to deliver something great. Small thing, one might think, but I think a small thing that makes a huge difference in what you could do here. I want us to open up for Q&As. I just want to highlight that if any of you listening in right now is curious to learn more about these subgroups and how to actually create these automated subgroups, peer groups that Frida and Martina were mentioning, you could schedule a call with me or my colleague Johan or Julia. Just below the stream, there's a button to schedule a call, and we'll introduce and talk some more about how you could do that if that sounds interesting. I have a bunch of things that I want to talk about, but we also got a lot of questions from the audience. One thing that I'd like to kick off with was the thing I just mentioned with the dedicated resources. What was the reaction when you said this? What was the initial reaction? What did you get pushback? What happened?
No, but I mean, to begin with, and please fill in, Frida, because we got this request, it was maybe 1.5 years ago. And then what you said, we can't do this unless you can give us some kind of product owner from your end. And then they were like, yeah, we're going to go home and think about it. And then it took some time. And then they actually came up with, okay, so we will create a new role for this that will work side by side with you. And I think also the mix between Frida and Siv, who was the new resources, that's really where the magic happens, because Siv knows everything about the processes here, and Frida knows everything there is to know about learning. So it was kind of a match made in heaven. So it was, it took some time, but the intentions were there all the time, I would say.
Yeah. Is this something that you will continue to do? You mentioned that this was a really important project and it was maybe easier to get a fully dedicated resources, but is this something you will continue to do, but maybe then in some cases, I don't know, I'm just ballparking here, but expecting 50% from someone?
Yeah, this is something that we do now in all our projects in some way. I mean, this was a huge one, so that's why we requested the one for 100%. But I mean, we always now want someone on the other side that can set up time for us.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. And to be honest there, I mean, we're not getting this kind of impact everywhere, and we're not getting this kind of resources, but now we have seen that this really works. So we will continue to push for this and make this happen all over, I would like.
Lavinia, I saw your head nodding a lot when this was mentioned. Do you want to mention what went through your head when they spoke about this?
Oh, so much. I was just writing in our private chat here that it takes so much courage. You mentioned something that's so important. It seems so small to say no or to request something, but it can change completely the trajectory of a project, right? So yeah, I do feel, talking about rewiring L&D and the question you were asking me earlier, I think one of the ingredients, if we can call them like that, is courage. It's courage to push back when people, because our stakeholders are usually are used to asking for training, right? That's what they've been doing for a long time. But we've learned that, and I think I'm quoting Frida here, that's not enough to drive change. So what we can do, because we're aware of it, is to push back. But you do require courage, and I'm always happy to see teams that are able to do that. And to Martina's point, I think it also takes a lot of experimentation. Sometimes you don't nail it from the start. And I think something else that we need in L&D nowadays is this mindset that, okay, we didn't make it work 100% from the start. What is it that we can learn? And what else do we need to change in order to have more impact?
Yeah, and I think that's really important too, because you said, I think it's our responsibility to challenge, but also, as you said, test things. And as we all know, we will not get it right the first time, but we need to try new things and find out. So I think that's, you nailed it there.
And we spoke about this, Martina, I think it was last week sometime, that in both of these cases, I mean, since you are continuously working close with the business, they address you with a challenge or a problem, and quite often they also have the solution. I mean, you don't, in most of these cases, you don't come up with a solution of how they should fix their problem, but like you said, in a really neat way, you have other attributes that makes it possible to scale it, that can tweak it, so it's not just like, here's the solution. How do we actually adopt this? How do we enable people to do these things? And I think that is, again, it's a small difference, but I think I see quite often organizations where the L&D team feels like they have to come up with the solutions. And I think the organizations, the business itself, quite often they know what they should do. It's just that they don't have the resources to, like you said, scale it, and they don't know exactly how it should be implemented in a good way.
Can I just connect back to what you said there, Lavinia, because you talked about, I mean, rewire and using the skills that we had. You talked about facilitation, but I also think that where you're at now, Michelle, like, we can also help by asking the right questions, because they do know what's needed, but sometimes you have to dig a little. So that's also something that I see is a really important thing for us, and to help them then scale it based on what they know should or need to happen.
Lavinia, I want to go back to you. So maybe we're coming back to a couple of things that you mentioned in your session. We got a question from the chat that was basically, what if we don't have a strategy? How do I actually anchor what we work with? And well, yeah, how do we address that if the company doesn't have a strategy?
It's a very good question and a tough one. I think it's still about creating space for conversation, because okay, you don't have a long-term strategy, but there needs to be some sort of aims to the work that you're doing, right? What are those aims? What is it that we're trying to do? Regardless of the team, and it involves us in L&D as well. What I feel is that we are wired nowadays to do a lot and not to step back and to think, why are we doing what we're doing? And again, going back to the rewiring L&D question, I think that's why it's so hard to rewire L&D, because we're so busy with doing the work that we're doing that we don't take a moment to just stop and say, look, just running, being a training factory is no longer what we need. We do need to think of other methods of, we do need to ask better questions, to redesign our processes, and so on and so forth. And I think, again, this is the case for us in L&D, but it's the same case for every other team out there. What they might be missing are these facilitation skills, and just bringing people together and making sure everybody has a chance to speak up and asking the right questions, as Martina said. And this is something we can definitely do.
Another question that we got from Lynn, I think, Martina, this is directed to you, from the 98% completion rate that you got. And the question is, how did you encourage people to do it? Were there any incentives? Yeah. What do you think were the magic behind the completion rates?
And we thought a lot about that, because I just personally, I always kind of been against, measuring completion rates. I always kind of, that's defeat the point. But in this case, we actually needed it. And I think it was the pure, what do you say, pure pressure of the actual need itself, and that it was communicated by the top management, the country managers every week, that they needed, they got reminders from the district directors or the GMs all the time. So I think there weren't any incentives. It was just really clear that this was needed.
And prioritized, yeah.
Oh. And so when it comes to the completion rates, I have kind of needed to switch that mindset, because if we start with it and make it happen, maybe we can piggyback a bit on that. But again, it doesn't say the actual outcome, but here it helped us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one thing, since I have some insights into these programs, one thing I think you've done exceptionally well in this program is that you've mirrored the activities towards the line managers. The line managers are aware of the fact that your employees will do X right now, so these are ways that you can support. So they're one step ahead. They know what they will get, and they are encouraging to do things like, you will get X tomorrow, therefore it's important that we do this. I think that's, again, small thing, but makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have gotten a question from Miguel. How do you integrate learning groups and discussions into day-to-day work? How do you create opportunities for employees to participate in these groups? Frida, do you want to double click on the peer groups?
Say again, Michelle.
Yeah, so the question was around the integrated learning groups, the peer groups. how had you set it up, and how does the discussions fit into their day-to-day work?
So we give them a little help on the way. We have, so they know what to discuss, but they are facilitating them all by themselves. They are setting them up through the system by themselves. So we have no control over the groups. But the results, but we get feedback from these groups have been, I mean, they love it. They love just coming together, because what we do is we create space for them to meet and think and do something else from not what they do every day. So it's been highly appreciated. I thought this was going to be the one where they just, no, this is not, I don't like this, I'm not going to show up. But this has been the one, this is scoring the highest out of everything we do. So yeah, they love it.
I think this connects really well, Lavinia, to what you mentioned, the importance of actually giving them time to have these conversations and discussions. That's what you're doing here. You're giving them actual time. And again, connecting, Frida, to one of the things, it's actually not really like training and learning. It's more, they come there to practice. And I love that. Yeah. I think, Lavinia, coming back to like the rewiring, I think a lot more of what we will be doing is setting time off, giving individuals the gift of time to practice, to do things that we know are important. Well, Lavinia, if I connect you to that point.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And I like this idea of connection over content, because content is available everywhere nowadays. So the question is, how can we redesign our sessions so that people want to come? Because, you know, they can get their frameworks on, you know, whatever, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever they use. But I feel like this connection bit, and we know that social learning is so important and so effective, of course, with the right context and the right facilitation skills and so on. But yeah, I so agree with the idea that our job will be more about connecting people and bringing them together so they can make sense of things, because in their day-to-day job, going back to my earlier point, there's so much doing, that some people do crave these moments of, let's stop and let's think. And I want to learn how a colleague does this and how another colleague does this. And this also brings, and Frida mentioned quite a few times, this idea of context. Because sometimes, I mean, external trainers can be amazing, but sometimes they are missing context. But what your colleagues have is context, which makes whatever they say so much more relevant to your situation.
And you trust them as well. You trust the colleague.
Yes.
Yeah, and speaking of content, because I know in the beginning some of the participants turned to Frida and was like, we will not have time for this. We have so much work to do. But then Frida was like, yeah, but you will do the work meanwhile in these sessions. And then they were like, aha. So I think that's a part of the clue as well. It's not something that we add on top of it. It's like you actually practice and do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, because that was one of the details you mentioned, that Frida, in the beginning. They're actually working on a specific customer. Like, this is a case I have right now. I think coming back to, it's the gift of time. Now we have 2.5 hours for you to work with this customer case.
Yeah.
And speaking of gift of time, I don't know, but when I'm guessing you have seen all the surveys, like why isn't learning happening? You always see that lack of time. But I mean, even if we just give them time, they would probably use it for something else. So when we do it this way, we kind of tap into that challenge, I guess.
Just because you're making such a good point, Martina. The question is it time the problem? I don't think it's time. If you ask again, why, you realize that priorities might be a problem, like other things. It's not that they don't have time. We can make time to scroll TikTok all day because it gives us something that we need. I think the question we are facing now is, what is it that attracts people to gather to get together so they can learn. And if we nail that, they will come.
Yeah. And I think we're into something here.
Definitely. I see a lot of questions in the chat and a lot of comments around the structure and the timing of sessions in accordance with what's relevant for the individuals in the sales program. Could Martina and Frida, could you explain some more? Like it sounds so. Of course, you should do it like this, but I'm also quite aware that that's probably maybe wasn't that obvious at the beginning. So how come you ended up? How come you found this idea? Could you explain some more?
I mean, you want, as we said now many times, we want to create space in their calendars and time for them to meet and learn. And we just wanted it to be like an ongoing process forever and ever because they are working with their customers. It is everyday work. We're just trying to do it now, you know, like pushing them, if I can say that, in a way that we want them to work, if that makes sense. I mean, so we are just we're just structuring their time for them.
But can I add to something there, Frida? Because it sounds so simple, but I know that Frida and Siv, they work really hard with this. I mean, how should we do this? What order, etc. And Siv took it back and you discussed. So I think there is a lot of work, as you said. It's not intentional this way, but just finding that structure, and that requires that we have somebody on the business side that knows this. And if they don't know it, they have the contacts. And I mean, you used reference groups on in the sales organization as well to get the structure, to make it meaningful.
Yeah, because I quite often hear conversations like when we're talking about launching a training, that time there will be a lot of other things in their heads at that moment. But yeah, hopefully they can find the time. And basically what we're saying is that this should probably not be what we're supporting them with right now because they have something else that is more prioritized. So how do we help them with that? It sounds so simple, but it's really not. Lavinia, your thoughts on that?
I have some controversial thoughts here.
Good.
Because what I'm wondering is when do we, because AI is available now, right? So I feel like for the first time ever, we are able to do learning in the flow of work properly. Like the term has been for a while with us, but it meant having like documents and checklists and updating them was so hard. But with AI, we can make it easier, right? So just having those tools, if I can call them, but again, think checklist, job aids, a bot that can talk to someone in the flow of work. So they don't need to step away from work to get support, right? So there's that workflow learning part. And then there's the connection part, which are two, in my opinion, they serve two very, very different needs, where one is it's more transactional, like think I need to fix my washing machine and I don't need to go to a group and learn step by step what the washing machine is and so on and so forth. I need support now versus I need to understand why feedback is important, which is a mindset transformation. So getting together with a group to talk to different people and listen to them talking about this will help me rewire. We've been using this word so much now, but rewire how I think about things. So for me, in the future is how will we use these two different tools that we now have available to serve, again, two very different gaps. I'm not even sure if I've made any sense there, but this is what I was thinking about.
I think you made a lot of sense, and I think we're thinking, all of us thinking the same thing right now. We got more questions on this structure. We got one from let's see where I put it. We got one from lost it. Gregory. He's also saying it's really innovative take on how you build it. I wonder what type of education and educational goals were included in the pre-work portion, and what type of learner analysis that occurred.
Do you want to answer that, Martina, or should I?
But which one did Gregory mean? Sorry, I didn't really follow. Was that for
the sales program?
Oh, sorry.
Then,
Sorry. I thought the first
then
one.
if you want to try to answer that one.
Yeah, can
We
you
can
say
try
it
together.
Were there any types of educational goals? Did you have any evaluation goals? What did you include in the pre-work? If we double click on the pre-work, what was that actually? What included it? Yeah, let's start with those.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with the pre-work. So the pre-work, they always use their own customers. They always work with their own customers. So then we set, and we always give them what, because we in the end we can measure what the success or not in our CRM system. So we tell them, okay, we're going to look at these data fields in our CRM systems now. So when we're done, when we're through the whole focus period 1, we want this to happen. We want you to have added these many contacts, for example, or we want you to have filled in these fields in the CRM system. That is the goal. So we're very clear on what we want in the end. And then it starts already from the pre-work. And so they get an assignment, and then we just build on that. So they will then eventually have been filled in all the fields in the CRM system or added the context or whatever. So they know what we expect from the beginning and what the end goal is and where we measure it in the CRM system. Did I answer the question?
And maybe Frida, we can just add also, and I think, I don't know if we said that, but everything was based on a playbook that the sales organization defined with the new ways of working. And based on that playbook, how they should be able to do this way of working, we identified, or together with Steve, obviously, what kind of skills you needed. So that is kind of the evaluation goal, if you like, that you should have the skills needed to create revenue, bring in more customers. I think it all comes back to that, actually.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And we just got a question regarding technology for the live session. Was that physical session, or did you use any technology for the sessions in the sales program as well?
The sessions are in Teams, live digital sessions. We call
them. Maybe a bit of a selfish question right here, but I mean, I was of course very happy when you mentioned that this could not have been done without Noli, which of course made me very happy to hear. But what specifically did you use Noli for, and what did you think that you couldn't have done without it?
We used it for everything. I mean, it was a way to structure the whole journey, not only keeping track of all the participants and managers, because as I showed, we have like a participant track, and then we also have the manager track. So as I said, when the participant gets an assignment or something, the manager will always know where they are and so on. So that would just have been impossible to do ourselves. We don't have that kind of LMS system, for example. We can't do that. So it's for us, it's a structure, but it's also giving us a lot of feedback, because it's built in a way with a lot of questions. So we get a lot of answers as well. So I feel like I know how they feel out there, because I get so much feedback from the system. I know how they feel and where they are, where the managers are, and what they're doing all the time. It's just, it's amazing.
And I can add to that one because I mean we have evaluated lots of different LMSs and LXPs, but this specific kind of functionality helping us driving this kind of learning journeys and behavioral changes. I haven't seen any system that does this in this specific way that Noli does. So very helpful, I would say.
That makes me, of course, very, very happy to hear. Lavinia, I see a question coming back to your the surveys that you mentioned, and the question surveying how well aware are you of the strategy and so on. We have some input on that. There's well, the question is, there's no way to know if people, when they actually answer this, understand the company strategy, what they're answering, if they're answering accurately. How do I tackle that challenge?
Not sure I understand the question. Is it that it's not, if there's a low score, for example, I can imagine why that happens. Again, I'm just assuming that this is the question. I think qualitative research is something that you need to do as a follow-up, just to understand what people are saying. But then, and it's a good point, because one of the things that we had to do, we realized that people were referring to very different things when it came to different terms that we were using in our engagement survey. Like, what does strategy mean? Is it my team strategy? Is it the company strategy? What does team mean even? Like, people were referring to the term team in different ways. And I think defining it, the way we did it was that we added like a help tool, something near some of the questions that we found like very, very important. And then in the conversations we had as a follow-up of our engagement survey, because we were facilitating those conversations with every team in the company, we made sure to define together what those terms meant in the survey. But it's a long-term process of making sure that everyone understands the same thing. But again, qualitative research as a follow-up is a good way to pinpoint where the problem actually lies. Is it that they are not aware? Is it that they are aware but they don't understand? What exactly don't they understand? And yeah, talking to people is a way forward.
It's definitely crucial. Lavinia, Martina, Frida, thank you so much for this. This was extremely valuable, and I'm really grateful for your sharing all your expertise and all your experience around this. I have taken with me a lot of things that I've written down on a lot of paper. So thank you for this, and I'm really certain that a lot of people have thought of this session as really valuable for them as well. A few quick things before we wrap things up. We have opened up breakout rooms. So if you want to jump out in the breakout rooms and network with the other people in the event, please do. We will keep these open for another 30 minutes. I think that Martina, Frida, and Lavinia will join them as well. So you can keep on asking them questions out there and network with other peers from all around the world in the breakout rooms. The recording from today will also, of course, be sent out in a few moments as soon as it is done. If you want to share that with a colleague or a friend, please do. If there's someone that you think should join to the upcoming sessions, please let them know about Performance Impact Week. Share the link and make sure that they attend the last 3 days of the week that we have left. The more we are here, the merrier it will get. And please keep on sharing in social media what your key takeaways are, if that was something that you thought was interesting from the event. And please use the hashtag PIV2026 so we can continue on having the dialogue and discussion outside of the event as well. Tomorrow, the theme is designing for performance. So we're moving from partnering to actually designing the activity. We've been touching on these topics today as well, but we will get to a deep dive into how we actually design for performance together with the wonderful Melanie Martinelli from the Institute for Transfer Effectiveness. And she'll talk a lot about the importance of all the hard work we need to do before. We talk a lot about performance and impact being created afterwards, but for all of these things to happen afterwards, there's a lot of things that need to happen before. And she will help us understand what we need to get into place. We'll also be joined by our practitioners, Sandra Andrén from Grant Thornton, that will share their innovative way in introducing new managers. They've done something really cool here. And for all of you thinking about how to introduce new managers in a good way, don't miss tomorrow. I think you'll like it. And if you're curious and interested to know more about what we do at Noli and the peer group activities that Frida mentioned in their session, please book a short call. It's a button just below here in the stream. Me or Johan or Julia will jump on that call and let you know some more. I hope to be able to speak with a lot of people and to share more about what we do at Noli. We will see you tomorrow again. It's the same link, it's the same channel, same time, and have a really good rest of the day. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye.